Hey guys, tonight we slip on our most dramatic robes and wander straight into the wild, noisy heart of ancient Athens, where the air smells of wine, fresh earth, and something suspiciously like roasted goat. The moon is rising over the Acropolis, but you're not drifting off to sleep just yet. Instead, you're pushing your way through a crowd of rowdy Athenians, all headed toward the festival of Dionysia, a days-long party so rowdy, so unhinged, and so central to city life that it birthed an art form, Greek drama.
You're squinting into torchlight, tripping over someone's sandal, and trying not to get run over by a procession of flute players and citizens painted like satyrs. Reality check: you probably won't survive this without picking up a headache, a few strange stories, and a very powerful appreciation for drama, both on and off the stage.
So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. While you're at it, post your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're tuning in from, even if it's not 5th century Athens. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The spring air is soft, but the city is not. You trudge along ancient roads, sandals, slipping on dusty stones. Every citizen seems swept up in a nervous excitement, because the Dionysia is no ordinary holiday. It's a heady mix of religious devotion, civic pride, and an excuse for collective chaos. Imagine Mardi Gras, the Super Bowl, and the Oscars rolled into one, then doused with wine and left to ferment under the Mediterranean sun. At the heart of the festival is Dionysus, the god of wine, madness, ecstasy, and somewhat ironically, theatre. The city holds the Dionysia each year to honour him, which means for several days, everyone from stonemasons to statesmen ditches work, dresses up, and parades through the streets in his name.
It's the original out-of-office message, sorry, can't talk. Worshipping Dionysus, a mainstream historical fact. The Dionysia started as a small rural festival, but by the 5th century BCE, it was a city-wide extravaganza. Theatrical competitions were its beating heart. Playwrights would present new tragedies and comedies, actors would strut and bellow, and the city's finest critics, which is to say everyone, would offer their opinions in true Athenian style, loudly, often, and without mercy.
You catch sight of the opening procession, a raucous, winding line of musicians, priests, politicians, and citizen choruses, all making their way up to the theatre. At the front, there's a statue of Dionysus himself, gleaming in the torchlight, being wheeled in on a ceremonial cart. Some people sing, some shout, some have already started on the wine. The crowd is a sensory buffet, the smell of olive oil lamps, the glitter of gold jewellery, the sound of goatskin drums, and the shrill pipes of the aloes. You'd better watch your step. The festival is famous for its lack of inhibitions, at least for the men. There's laughter, lewd jokes, and the occasional squabble over who gets the best seat. Children run underfoot, vendors hawk honey cakes and figs, and the city's wealthiest citizens sponsor enormous floats and choruses to show off their generosity and maybe win a little political clout. If you're expecting a polite modern theatre crowd, think again. Everyone's packed in, elbow to elbow, and nobody's afraid to let you know what they think. The Dionysia is democratic, in a shouty, snack-throwing sort of way. Historians still argue whether the festival's wild energy was a way to let the city blow off steam, a ritual release valve, or simply an excuse for a week-long party that just happened to invent Western drama. Suddenly, the mood shifts. A group of priests leads the crowd in a solemn sacrifice, a goat offered to Dionysus as thanks for last year's harvest and in hopes of a good show. The animal's blood is poured on the altar, smoke rises, and for a moment everyone is silent. Then, as quickly as reverence descends, it's swept away by cheers, music, and a general stampede toward the hillside theatre. Quirky tidbit: Part of the tradition was a contest for the best phallic parade float. Yes, you heard right. If you ever wondered where drama's sense of humour comes from, look no further than a city willing to award prizes for the most creative symbolism. As you're swept along by the tide, you spot a few important citizens in togas, already deep in debate over last year's plays. Someone in the crowd is reciting lines from Aeschylus, and another is dramatically miming a tragic death, though it looks suspiciously like he's just trying to get out of carrying the wine jug. Athens during the Dionysia is a place where poetry meets party, where theatre is less about sitting quietly and more about showing off, arguing and maybe landing a starring role if you shout loud enough. Historians still debate just how much the average Athenian understood of the more philosophical plays. Some say the crowd was too drunk to follow subtlety. Others argue that even the poorest citizen could quote Euripides after the third day. Either way, you're in a city where drama is king, and everyone's a critic. The night grows late, but sleep is a distant memory. Lanterns flicker, lyres strum, and the city of Athens pulses with excitement, anticipation, and a healthy dose of anxiety over who will win the next big prize. As you glance up at the moonlit Acropolis, you realize, tonight you're not just a spectator, you're part of a centuries-old tradition, one that blends ritual and revelry, sacred and profane, in a way only the Greeks could master. You wake with the first blush of sunlight creeping across the city's marble stones, the air still cool and filled with the faint scent of yesterday's wine and olive oil. Today, you're part of the city's great migration. Thousands of people winding their way up the slopes of Athens toward the open-air theatre. Your sandals slap against smooth rock as you climb, blinking in the morning light, squinting at the immense horseshoe of stone seats carved into the hillside. No velvet curtains, no chandeliers, no plush red cushions. Here theatre is pure spectacle, nature as the grandest backdrop, and the audience arranged in careful democratic disorder. The theatre of Dionysus sprawls out before you, thousands of seats stretching from the orchestra at the bottom all the way to the sky. It's part stadium, part sanctuary, and all communal chaos. If you want a good view, you'd better show up early and be ready to elbow your neighbour for it. Mainstream historical fact: Greek theatres were always built into hillsides, using the natural incline to create perfect acoustics and provide seating for up to 17,000 spectators in Athens at its peak. No one worried about ticket stubs. Your place in society often dictated where you sat. Citizens at the front, metics and foreigners somewhere in the middle, women and slaves usually up on the nosebleed tiers. It was theatre for the people, but with a pecking order as carefully orchestrated as the chorus itself. You settle into a hard stone seat and quickly realize the sun is merciless. No shade, unless you brought your own hat or bribed a friend to shield you with a cloak. The actors below are no more protected. The stage is open to the elements, and the show goes on rain or shine, sometimes even in the middle of a spring thunderstorm. You're reminded that theatre here isn't a cosy nighttime affair, but a test of stamina, attention span, and how long you can keep from sunburn. Light joke. If you ever wondered why Athenian skincare was a thing, look no further than an all-day tragedy marathon under a cloudless sky. As the city fills the seats, the anticipation grows. Vendors weave through the aisles selling figs, barley cakes, and honeyed wine. Children squabble, old men argue about last year's performances, and a few people mutter anxiously about the weather, glancing at the horizon for signs of Zeus's mood. The city's officials, draped in their finest, drop down to the front rows. If you're lucky, you'll spot a famous general or a playwright nervously fidgeting with their laurel wreath, secretly praying for applause. You notice the orchestra, a circular space at the foot of the seats, where the chorus will soon stamp and sing. Behind it, the skein, a simple backdrop of painted boards or stone, sets the scene for gods, heroes, and the occasional rampaging monster. No trapdoors or revolving stages yet, just clever use of space, light, and the boundless imagination of a crowd eager for a story. Historians still argue whether the Greeks were obsessed with perfection or simply practical. Theatres weren't just places to watch plays, they were communal hubs, venues for debate, religious rituals, and the occasional political showdown. The acoustics are so good, you can hear whisper from the stage all the way in the back row. Try that at your next open-air concert.
Quirky tidbit: the Theatre of Dionysus was so famous that tourists from other cities would make the trek just to see its marvels. Some even carved their names into the stone seats, a kind of ancient graffiti, proof that Sophocles was here long before Instagram was invented.
The sun climbs higher, and the buzz intensifies. Someone breaks into song, another group starts a mock argument, shouting lines from a comedy. You realize there's no hush before the curtain, no gentle dimming of lights to cue the start. When the festival begins, it erupts all at once. Drums pound, flutes wail, and suddenly the whole city is swept up in a wave of sound and anticipation. Sitting there, surrounded by voices and laughter, with the Parthenon glowing gold above, you can almost forget how uncomfortable the seats are. This is more than entertainment, it's Athens itself, laid bare and noisy, every joy and worry echoing off the stones. Historians still debate just how democratic these mass gatherings really were, but no one can deny the thrill of being part of a spectacle that belongs to everyone, even if only for a day. As the first actors take the stage, you lean forward, squinting against the sunlight, ready to be swept away. The heat, the noise, the wild swirl of faces. Here, theatre isn't an escape from life. It's life magnified, sunburned, and unforgettable. As you settle onto your sun-warmed slab of stone, your eyes are drawn to the commotion at the edge of the orchestra. A cluster of actors, barely distinguishable from the crowd a moment ago, is transforming before your eyes. They slip behind a makeshift screen and emerge almost unrecognizable. Enormous painted masks now cover their faces, their features exaggerated, gaping mouths, furrowed brows, wild eyes. They stride with measured purpose, each step weighted by the drama of the moment. Welcome to the world of Greek theatre's most iconic invention, the mask. Mainstream historical fact: every actor on the Greek stage wore a mask, crafted from linen, wood, or even cork, coated with a thin layer of plaster, and painted with vivid colours. Masks weren't just a fashion statement, they were essential. They allowed actors to play multiple roles, to project their voices through open mouths that acted like built-in megaphones, and to broadcast expressions clear to the farthest row. In a theatre that could seat thousands, subtlety was left at a hero's anguish, a villain's glee, a god's fury, all larger than life, all painted in bold strokes. You lean forward, studying the transformation. The masks are paired with towering wigs and padded costumes. A small, slim man suddenly becomes a thundering king. A burly farmer turns into a tragic queen. You can't help but chuckle at the sight, a little like watching your most serious uncle try on a Halloween costume that's just a touch too dramatic. The actors move in stylized gestures, their arms sweeping, their voices booming, their feet tracing careful patterns in the dust. Quirky tidbit: some of the most popular masks weren't for tragic kings or fearsome gods, but for everyday characters: the boastful cook, the gossipy old woman, the lovesick youth. Comedies especially loved these types, letting the audience laugh at themselves, their neighbours, and anyone foolish enough to think the world made sense. Some masks even had moving parts, a wiggling eyebrow or a comically oversized tongue, ready to flop out during a particularly bawdy joke. The actors, hidden behind these faces, find a strange kind of freedom. You realise that with a mask on, you can say things you'd never dare otherwise. You can insult the city's politicians, mock the gods, or confess to crimes no one would admit in daylight. Masked, you're both yourself and someone else entirely. Historians still argue whether this anonymity made Greek theatre a force for social change, or just gave people an excuse to let loose in ways their mothers wouldn't approve of. Masks also played with mystery. In the flicker of torchlight, with the chorus singing and the crowd roaring, you start to lose track of who's who.
Was that the same actor who played the tyrant in the last play? Did the woman wailing over her lost son just cackle as a scheming slave? It's a game, a trick, and a delight for an audience that never seems to tire of guessing.
A light joke wafts through the crowd. If you don't like the performance, just blame the mask. After all, no one wants to insult their neighbour if he's moonlighting as a chorus member or wearing the grumpy grandpa mask from last year's tragedy. You watch as the actors perform their opening dance, the sun glinting off their elaborate costumes, dust swirling at their feet. The sound of their voices, amplified by mask and open mouth, rises to the very last row. For a moment you imagine what it must be like to play a god, to become someone else, to stand before thousands and be met not by polite applause, but by a chorus of laughter, tears, or sometimes a shower of olives and the occasional flying fig. Masks weren't only for the actors. The city itself was a kind of mask. People wore their public faces to the festival, hiding fears and ambitions beneath polite smiles and grand speeches, on stage and off. The line between truth and performance blurs until it's almost impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. Historians still debate whether theatre revealed the real Athens or simply gave it a place to hide. You lean back, the mask makers paint still bright under the relentless sun, and watch the actors prepare for another round. There's comfort in knowing that behind every tragedy and every joke, someone just like you is sweating in a borrowed robe, hoping their mask doesn't slip at just the wrong moment. And if tonight you dream of wild faces and booming voices, you'll know the masks did their work. In the end, maybe we're all just actors waiting for our cue, masks at the ready, hoping the audience is kind. A gentle breeze stirs, and your attention is drawn away from the actors to a group massing just behind them, 40 strong, stepping in perfect unison, their white robes swaying, voices rising in a coordinated, haunting hum. This is the chorus, the pulsing, singing heart of Greek theatre, ready to stamp, sway and serenade you through every twist and turn of the play. Forget everything you know about modern musicals or half-hearted background dancers. Here, the chorus is a star in its own right, a living, breathing megaphone for the audience's anxieties, a gossip column come to life, and sometimes a very opinionated peanut gallery. Mainstream historical fact. In every major Greek play, the chorus was essential, ranging in size from a dozen to over 50 members. The synchronized movement, chanting and song wove in and out of the action, commenting on the events, giving advice or simply marveling at the bad decisions of whichever tragic hero was falling apart on stage. Their origins were religious choral dances and hymns dedicated to Dionysus. But by the golden age of Athens, they had become the storytellers, the conscience, and the comic relief all at once. The leader of the chorus, the Coryphaeus, steps forward, voice carrying across the open theatre, "O wretched Oedipus, why do you tempt the gods?" You can't help but grin. He sounds exactly like your great aunt after 3 cups of wine, warning you not to get ideas above your station. The chorus circles the orchestra, feet pounding out the rhythm, arms rising and falling in elaborate patterns. Sometimes their advice is profound. Sometimes it's about as helpful as a horoscope written after the fact. Historians still argue whether audiences truly took the chorus's warnings to heart, or just enjoyed the spectacle of synchronized moralizing. Quirky tidbit, many choruses were made out of regular citizens, not professional actors. Being selected was an honour and a hefty commitment. You'd spend months training, learning not just the songs, but the intricate footwork. Imagine dance rehearsal meets choir practice meets ancient CrossFit. And yes, the ability to gossip in unison was highly prized. A city that could coordinate a chorus could perhaps coordinate itself. Choruses weren't limited to tragedy.
In comedy, they could transform into frogs, clouds, wasps, whatever the playwright's feverish imagination required.
They'd crack jokes, break the fourth wall, and occasionally roast members of the audience, calling out politicians, generals, or anyone unlucky enough to catch their eye. Light joke: if you think being roasted by a stand-up comic is rough, try being mocked by 40 dancing Athenians in matching tunics. The chorus's power came from their unity. One voice alone could be ignored, but a chorus was relentless, a rolling wave of sound and movement that swept up audience and actors alike. They could heighten the tragedy of a hero's fall or undercut a villain's triumph with a single savage verse. Sometimes their commentary was so sharp, playwrights would bribe the chorus for gentler treatment, proving that even in ancient Athens, nobody wants bad press. Behind the scenes, the chorus practiced endlessly. The rhythm of their stamping feet, the complexity of their choral harmonies, the precision of their group gestures. It was a spectacle even before the play began. And if the weather turned, or the lead actor forgot a line, it was the chorus who kept things moving, filling awkward silences with a convenient song or a pithy aside. Historians still debate whether the chorus acted as the voice of the people, giving expression to the hopes and fears of the audience, or if they were simply the playwright's mouthpiece, ensuring that nobody left without understanding the moral of the story.
Maybe both.
What's certain is that when the chorus cried out, the whole city listened. You find yourself humming along to their latest refrain, letting the rhythm sink into your bones. The chorus has a way of making the ancient world feel closer, their voices echoing through centuries, inviting you to join the dance, the song, the endless human drama. And if, in the morning, you wake with a tune stuck in your head or a sudden urge to narrate your life in verse, well, you can blame the chorus for that. The sun beats down as the first drama unfolds, and you brace yourself for emotional whiplash. Welcome to the most competitive showdown in ancient Athens, tragedy versus comedy. On one side, actors wail and wring their hands, cloaked in the heavy woes of myth and fate. On the other, a new troupe is waiting backstage, painted faces already twisting into exaggerated grins, ready to toss jokes into the crowd like pomegranates at a harvest festival. Tonight you're in for both tears and laughter, and a few moments of squirming in that stone seat, unsure if you're meant to gasp, giggle, or just hope the play ends before your legs fall asleep. Mainstream historical fact: the heart of the Dionysia was a fierce contest between tragedies and comedies. Tragedy came first. Think stories of doomed kings, vengeful gods, lost children, and families cursed for generations. After days of sorrowful catharsis, comedy arrived like a breeze off the Aegean, bawdy, satirical, and shockingly direct. Both forms were essential, but only one could win the festival's coveted prizes: crowns of ivy, public acclaim, and sometimes a few centuries of literary immortality. You lean forward as the first tragedy begins. The actors are monumental, masked faces painted with sorrow, their voices tumbling through the theatre. The story is familiar: pride, punishment, hubris. The chorus groans in sympathy, the audience dabs their eyes, or pretends to, and somewhere behind you an old woman mutters, "Well, he should have listened to the gods." Historians still argue whether tragedy genuinely purged the soul, as Aristotle claimed, or if the audience just relished the chance to gossip about mythical disasters. But then the mood shifts. A new chorus bursts onto the stage, this one painted in greens and blues, masks contorted into leers and smirks. Comedy has arrived, and suddenly the audience is cackling, Jokes fly, slapstick abounds, and the city's leaders are mercilessly lampooned. Someone tosses a handful of olives. A group of teenagers roars with laughter at a joke about taxes. Some things never change. The comedic chorus breaks into song, their rhythm and rhymes poking fun at the very tragedies that played earlier.
Light joke. In Athens it said, if you couldn't laugh at yourself, don't leave the house.
Quirky tidbit. Comedies often featured parabasis moments when the chorus dropped the mask of the play and addressed the audience directly, sometimes giving the playwrights actual opinions on politics or city life. Imagine pausing Hamlet so Shakespeare can rant about Elizabethan taxes. It's fourth wall breaking before fourth walls even existed. The contest is real, and the audience is invested. Boos and cheers rise and fall. Playwrights nervously count the laughs, the tears, the moments of silence. Prizes are handed out in public ceremonies, with the city's top officials presiding. Winning isn't just a matter of civic pride, it's political capital, future sponsorship, and dinner invitations from the city's elite. Historians still debate which form had more cultural impact. Did tragedies shape the city's conscience, or did comedies keep its spirit alive? Perhaps both. Each genre left its own mark. Tragedies teaching the dangers of pride and the inevitability of fate. Comedies giving Athens permission to laugh at itself, to question, to resist with a wink and a song. You watch enthralled as one play morphs into the next, the city swept up in emotional. For every sob a chuckle, for every ominous prophecy a punchline. The stone theatre becomes a crucible for every feeling imaginable. By the end you're exhausted, emotionally spent, but also strangely satisfied. Here, in the blazing sun and the dust of Athens, the Greeks discovered the ancient and oddly modern truth that you can't have tragedy without comedy, or comedy without a little tragedy. As the crowd spills out into the twilight, the echoes of laughter and tears linger. Your face hurts from smiling, your eyes sting from crying, and you realize you wouldn't have missed this for anything, even if you're not sure whether you should be cheering, weeping, or just clapping for the next round of snacks. The crowd has barely had time to recover from its collective roller coaster when a new tension crackles in the air. The arrival of the festival's true celebrities, the playwrights, forget the image of quiet poets scribbling in solitude. Here playwrights are stars, rivals, and depending on the day, the city's favourite targets for both adulation and outrage. You scan the theatre and spot the laurel-crowned heads of Athens' dramatic royalty: Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, Aristophanes. Each one is a legend, a personality, and a master of their own brand of stage magic. Mainstream historical fact: the Dionysia and other theatre festivals gave rise to some of the world's greatest playwrights. Aeschylus, the father of tragedy, introduced the second actor and grand themes of justice and fate. Sophocles added a third actor and refined the tragic arc, making Oedipus a household name, and giving Freud future nightmares. Euripides, ever the provocateur, broke taboos, making heroes flawed, women powerful, and gods questionable. On the lighter side, Aristophanes reigned as king of comedy, writing political satires so sharp they sometimes got him in trouble with the law. Each playwright brought something new, raising the stakes and raising eyebrows. You're nudged by your neighbour, who points out a robed figure nervously chewing his stylus.
Is it Aeschylus muttering lines for his next grand trilogy? Or maybe Sophocles, flashing a winning smile, already schmoozing city officials for better festival slots? The theatre is as much a stage for ego as for art.
Light joke. In Athens, if you wanted to see drama off stage, just seat two playwrights next to each other and mention the word innovation. Quirky tidbit. Playwrights didn't just write, they directed, acted, and sometimes even performed as chorus leaders. Rehearsals were intense, with the city's pride and their own reputation on the line. In a world without copyright, Plagiarism and parody were common. Plays could be borrowed, rewritten, or gleefully mocked the following year. The city buzzed with rumours. Who would win? Who would flop? Who would scandalise the audience? With an unexpected twist. The competition was cutthroat. Prizes were awarded by a jury of randomly selected citizens. Imagine having your fate decided by a group that included everyone from poets to goat herders. The winners earned ivy wreaths, statues, and, sometimes, their names inscribed for posterity. But a loss could be brutal. Historians still argue whether the process was fair or just a way for the city's gossips to exact revenge on last year's winner. Aeschylus is known for grandeur and spectacle, sometimes accused of being a little too serious. Rumour has it he was killed by a tortoise, dropped by an eagle mistaking his bald head for a rock drama follows everywhere. Sophocles is the people's favourite, a master of pathos and plot, whose innovations set the standard for generations. Euripides, beloved and reviled, stirs up controversy with every new play. No one exposes the hypocrisies of Athens like he does. And then there's Aristophanes, whose comedies are so wild, the actors sometimes break character from laughter or embarrassment. Still debate whose influence was greatest. Was it Aeschylus's cosmic vision, Sophocles' perfect structure, Euripides' raw emotion, or Aristophanes' fearless lampooning? The only consensus: Greek theatre wouldn't be what it is without this cutthroat, creative, endlessly squabbling band of wordsmiths. You feel the excitement as the next play is announced, the playwrights exchanging nervous glances and forced smiles. Each one is hoping for applause, fearing boos, and secretly plotting next year's comeback. It's a reminder that every masterpiece, every ancient line you've ever heard quoted, was first born in the heat of rivalry and the chaos of the world's most dramatic city. The sun begins to dip, the shadows lengthen, and the festival's tension is palpable. Fame, fortune, and immortality all hang in the balance. And as the city waits for the next act, you realize behind every tragic hero and comic rogue is a playwright hoping, praying, and sometimes bribing that tonight the muses are on their side. A hush falls over the crowd as a new set of actors takes the stage, but something is missing, or rather, someone. You scan the faces, searching for a woman among the cast, and quickly realize every role, young or old, queen or servant, is played by a man. In ancient Athens, the world of theatre was strictly a boys' club, and the stories of women, tragic, powerful, hilarious, were filtered through the voices and movements of men in wigs, robes, and carefully crafted falsettos. It's a sight both impressive and, if you're honest, just a bit odd to modernize mainstream historical fact. Women were not allowed to act in ancient Greek theatre. Every role, from Helen of Troy to Medea, was portrayed by men and sometimes even boys, who trained to mimic female speech and gesture. In a society where women's public appearances were tightly restricted, this was both a reflection of social norms and perhaps a subtle way of poking fun at the rules themselves. Scholars still argue whether this exclusion was meant to protect women or simply to keep men's grip on all public performance. You watch as a tall, broad-shouldered actor glides across the stage in a glittering gown, face obscured by a painted mask with delicately arched brows. His voice swoops up, his hands flutter just so, and the crowd is utterly transfixed. The illusion is powerful, even if a few boys in the upper rows can't stifle their giggles. The audience for the most part accepts it. The suspension of disbelief is as old as drama itself. Still, you can't help but imagine the real women of Athens watching from afar, perhaps rolling their eyes or secretly critiquing every gesture. Quirky tidbit: while women couldn't act, they were essential behind the scenes. Mothers, wives, and sisters often sewed costumes, composed songs, or even coached husbands and sons on how to portray female characters with the right touch of dignity or drama. There were even rumours of women slipping advice to the chorus during rehearsals, correcting a gesture here or suggesting a line there. Anonymous but influential, The role of women in the audience is just as layered. Respectable women were allowed to attend, but they usually sat in the uppermost tiers, separated from men and sometimes veiled. The best seats were reserved for male citizens, but no one could stop a sharp-eyed woman from passing judgment or passing gossip from on high. Historians still debate how much women actually enjoyed these stories, or whether they saw them as one more public spectacle where their own voices were absent. Meanwhile, the stories themselves were often centered on women: queens, wives, daughters, witches, and slaves. Tragedy and comedy alike mined female experience for drama and catharsis, sometimes with surprising nuance, sometimes for cheap laughs. The paradox is hard to miss. Women's stories were everywhere, but women themselves were behind the mask, off stage, or simply out of sight. In comedies, cross-dressing and gender play were even more pronounced. Playwrights like Aristophanes delighted in flipping gender roles, making jokes about women's secret lives, and having men play women who were pretending to be men. It's enough to make your head spin, and to remind you that ancient Athens loved a good joke, especially if it involved bending the rules. Light joke: in Athens, if you ever forgot your lines, just blame it on the wig, or say you were playing confused heroine number 2. The rules would change centuries later as women began to take the stage in other cultures and eras. But here, in the heart of the world's most famous theatre, the gender line is both strict and strangely fluid, masked and mimed, hidden and hinted at, all at once. You watch as the queen delivers her tragic monologue, every word written by a man, spoken by a man, but echoing with centuries of unspoken dreams and disappointments. It's a reminder that even in a world built on performance, some truths must be imagined, borrowed, or stolen to make their way into the spotlight. The sun dips lower, the stories grow more complex, and the crowd shifts restlessly. The festival rolls on, and behind every mask you sense another layer, a secret, a longing, a joke only half told. As dusk softens the edges of the city, you can feel the festival's energy ripple outward, tugging every citizen, rich or poor, citizen or slave, toward the theatre. But this gathering is more than a love of stories or spectacle. Here, in the stony shadow of the Acropolis, drama is woven into the fabric of Athenian democracy itself. Each laugh, gasp, and groan is part of a civic ritual, a space where politics, participation, and art all tumble together. If you've ever doubted the power of performance to shape a city, Athens is about to prove you wrong. Mainstream historical fact: theatre was a cornerstone of Athenian democracy. Attendance at the Dionysia wasn't just entertainment, it was a civic duty. Every free male citizen was expected to show up, and the city even subsidized tickets for the poor. The front rows were reserved for officials, heroes, and priests, a who's who of Athenian leadership. Between performances, political announcements and honours were handed out. Sometimes votes were taken, right there in the theatre. The Greeks took the idea of theatre as public forum and ran with it, making sure everyone had a stake in the drama unfolding on stage. You glance around and notice the careful choreography of Athenian society at work. A newly elected general is presented to applause and a few good-natured boos. A priest receives a crown for service to Dionysus. The city's treasurer rises to read out donations and announce which citizens have sponsored which choruses. There's always a little suspense. Would-be donors compete for honour, and the crowd remembers who was generous last year. The theatre is part stage, part parliament, part ancient equivalent of the town square. Quirky tidbit: playwrights often use their scripts to needle politicians, poke fun at civic leaders, or debate the burning issues of the day. Comedies, especially, took aim at everything from tax policy to foreign wars to the latest legal scandals. You get the sense that, in Athens, a sharp joke from the chorus could do more than a speech at the assembly. But politics wasn't confined to the script. Civic identity permeated the entire festival. The procession itself was a display of unity and competition, as tribes marched together in colourful ranks. The contests between playwrights became contests between neighbourhoods, families, and political factions. Winning brought glory not just to the artist, but to everyone associated with them. Historians still argue whether theatre truly democratized the city, or just gave the illusion of participation while real power remained with the elite. Perhaps both are true. Certainly, the crowd could be unruly, and its voice could turn against leaders or policies in a moment. A well-timed satire or a tragic story exposing the flaws of a popular general could ripple into real consequences. Theatre shaped opinion, cemented reputations, and sometimes, just sometimes, changed the course of the city's history.
You can't help but marvel at how naturally the Athenians blend politics and pleasure.
As a new play begins, the chorus greets the city's leaders with both reverence and mockery, blending sacred duty and irreverent fun. During a lull, a magistrate reads out a new law, and the crowd debates its merits with the same fervour they bring to the plot's latest twist. A light joke makes the rounds. If you want to avoid jury duty, just claim you're rehearsing for the Dionysia. There's truth to it. The boundary between civic work and civic play is delightfully porous. The sky deepens, torches flicker, and the theatre seems to pulse with a collective will. A city telling its own story, judging its own actions, and at least for tonight, finding meaning in shared laughter and sorrow. You realise that here the fate of Oedipus or Lysistrata is more than a story. It's a mirror, a lesson, and sometimes a warning. The chorus warns of pride, the audience murmurs agreement, and a politician shifts in his seat, pondering tomorrow's votes. Historians still debate whether democracy made the theatre, or the theatre made democracy. What's certain is that in this stony amphitheatre, every laugh and tear is a thread in the tapestry of the world's first great experiment in self-rule. The night grows richer, voices rise and fall, and as the next play begins, you find yourself a little more invested, not just in the fate of the characters, but in the fate of the city, and perhaps in your own part within this ancient, noisy, endlessly fascinating crowd. Just as you're settling back in your seat, wiping away a stray tear or a giggle from the last play, an official stands and announces the most anticipated event of the festival, the contest. This isn't just applause and a bouquet of olives. This is a full-scale dramatic showdown, where playwrights, actors, choruses, and entire neighbourhoods vie for glory, prizes, and the bragging rights that will echo through Athens for years to come. Get ready for a spectacle where a single performance can make or break a legend. Mainstream historical fact. Theatre festivals like the Dionysia and Lunaria weren't just about putting on a show. They were fierce competitions. Each playwright submitted a tetralogy, 3 tragedies and 1 satyr play, while comic playwrights submitted their wittiest, bawdiest scripts. A randomly chosen jury, sometimes as large as 10, sometimes as small as 3, decided the winner. Prizes ranged from wreaths of ivy or gold to banquets and lifelong fame. The process was public, and the stakes were high. You glance around and see the tension on every face. Playwrights pace the aisles, choruses huddle for last-minute pep talks, actors mutter lines under their breath, supporters wave banners or toss flowers, and you catch the gleam of hopeful eyes from every corner of the theatre. Some families have staked their reputations on the success of a single chorus member. And neighbours nudge each other. That's my cousin's son. If he flubs his solo, we'll never hear the end of it. Quirky tidbit. The contests were so cutthroat that cheating wasn't unheard of. Stories survive of bribed jurors, rigged lots, and city officials who just happened to favour a particular poet. The city's gossips watched closely, ready to pounce on any hint of favouritism. A comic chorus might even slip a sly jab into their performance. May the jury be as honest as their mothers claim. The climax of the festival comes when the winners are announced. Cheers erupt, tears flow, and the losers slink off to plot next year's comeback. The city throws parades, honours, and for the victors a level of celebrity that rivals today's pop stars. The playwright is awarded a place in the city's collective memory. His name, his hits, his themes woven into the very identity of Athens. Historians still argue whether these contests encouraged artistic innovation or just more elaborate scheming. Either way, the competition was intense, and every performance could tilt the balance. But the pressure doesn't end with the curtains fall. A bad performance could mean more than wounded pride. It might spell the end of a playwright's career, the ridicule of an entire neighbourhood, or a sharp drop in status for sponsors and families. Light joke. In Athens, you could recover from losing a goat, but losing the chorus contest was the real family shame. Sometimes, contests took unexpected turns. An underdog playwright could upset a favourite, or a first-time actor could steal the show. The stories of dramatic victories and upsets became part of the city's lore, retold in markets, banquets, and bedtime stories for years to come. Historians still debate whether these dramatic contests were more about civic unity or civic rivalry. Was the theatre a way to bring Athens together, or just a new battleground for old feuds? The answer, as always, is a little of both. The sun sets on another day of drama, laughter, and fierce competition. As the winners are crowned and the city erupts in celebration, you find yourself swept up in the excitement. For all its rivalry and politics, there's nothing quite like the electric energy of an entire city, united in the worship of story, spectacle, and the hope that just this once, your chorus will hit every note, and your playwright will bring home the prize. As night wraps the city in velvet, a hush falls over the audience. The flicker of torchlight reveals a stage set, not with grandeur, but with ingenious simplicity. You lean forward, eager to spot the next bit of stage magic. Greek theatre may not have boasted lasers or trapdoors just yet, but it was home to a treasure trove of clever tricks, visual gags, thunder-making machines, and grand illusions that made gods descend from the sky and monsters lurch from the wings. If you thought ancient drama meant dull staging, Athens is about to prove you wrong. Mainstream historical fact: the Greeks invented and perfected many theatrical special effects. The most famous was the Mechane, a giant crane used to hoist actors playing gods high above the stage, allowing them to fly in for a dramatic rescue or divine pronouncement. The audience would gasp as Apollo or Athena appeared out of thin air, setting the standard for plot twists and deus ex machina endings for centuries to come. You watch as a stagehand, half hidden behind the scene, works a system of pulleys and ropes. A masked Zeus swoops above the chorus, cloak billowing, thunder booming from a cleverly disguised sheet of metal. Other actors stomp across the wooden boards to mimic the march of armies, or the collapse of palaces. The orchestra erupts with a crash. Someone's just let loose a bundle of pebbles into a copper bowl, and suddenly it sounds like a raging storm. Quirky tidbit: Greek theatres also had the ekkyklema, a wheeled platform rolled out to reveal offstage action, like the aftermath of a bloody scene, helpful in a city where showing violence on stage was frowned upon. For an extra jolt, some productions used fire fountains and elaborate painted scenery to whisk the audience from Mount Olympus to the depths of the underworld in a matter of minutes. The crowd eats it up. Every clever trick is met with cheers, gasps, or, if things go wrong, riotous laughter. It's not all awe and wonder. Sometimes the machinery fails, leaving a god dangling awkwardly, or a monster's head rolling off in the wrong direction. Light joke: in Athens, it's said that the gods descend from the sky, unless the ropes tangle, in which case they descend on the stagehands instead. Historians still argue whether these effects were meant to dazzle or simply solve staging problems. Was the McCain about impressing the audience, or just a handy way to wrap up the play when the plot got out of hand? Either way, Athenian ingenuity was unmatched. Scenery was minimalist but meaningful. Painted panels and symbolic props turned bare skin into palaces, temples, or city gates. A single mask or a sprig of laurel was enough to conjure up whole worlds. The real magic was in the imagination, primed by the tricks of light, sound, and illusion. The audience knew the gods were just actors and the thunder was just a sheet of metal. But in the spell of performance, disbelief wasn't just suspended, it was gleefully flung from the heights of the Acropolis. Backstage, chaos reigns, actors scramble to change costumes, stagehands mutter curses, and the chorus huddles, hoping their next entrance doesn't end with someone tripping over a thunder machine. But somehow, every play comes together, a patchwork of sweat, skill, and a healthy dose of good fortune. Historians still debate whether these special effects were inspired by religious ritual, technical innovation, or a little bit of both. Some believe that the desire to make gods appear and disappear was rooted in ancient mystery cults. Others argue that Greek engineers simply loved a challenge. What's certain is that the results were unforgettable. You lean back, a little dazzled, a little amused. The tricks might seem quaint by modern standards, but for the Athenians, they were the height of spectacle and the heart of communal storytelling. As the chorus sweeps back on stage, torches blazing and thunder still echoing in your ears, you realize, in Athens, the simplest tricks can feel like real magic, especially when everyone is in on the secret. It's well past midnight and the air is humming with leftover excitement. But as the crowds begin to thin and the theatre's torches sputter, there's a different drama unfolding in the shadows, one the audience rarely sees. Backstage, among the tangle of robes, wigs and clattering props, the real play never stops. Rivalries smoulder, alliances form and crumble, and every actor, chorus member and stagehand is tangled in a web of competition, ambition, and nerves. If you thought the tragedies on stage were complicated, wait until you glimpse the chaos behind the scenes. Mainstream historical fact: the ancient Greek theatre was as much a crucible for personal drama as for public performance. Actors trained for months, often in groups that doubled as close-knit families and bitter competitors. Playwrights and directors juggled egos and tempers, knowing a single misstep on stage or off could spell disaster for the whole production. Backstage was a pressure cooker of hopes, rivalries, and last-minute improvisation. You step behind the scene, and the energy changes, actors pacing, mumbling lines, some rehearsing gestures in front of polished bronze mirrors. One is weeping, another is cursing the chorus for stepping on his best line, and somewhere a boy is frantically searching for a missing mask. The wardrobe mistress barks orders, the stage manager attempts to herd everyone into order, and the musicians tune their flutes with the haunted look of people who know they'll be blamed if the next entrance is off-key. Quirky tidbit. It's said that the greatest Greek actors had a signature move, a dramatic hair toss, a thunderous foot stomp, or a tragic cloak swirl. Some even had groupies, eager to catch a glimpse backstage, and maybe, just maybe, borrow a prop as a lucky charm. If an actor's sandal broke, or his voice cracked during a crucial monologue, it could be the stuff of local legend, or endless teasing from the chorus for years to come. Backstage gossip is a sport of its own. The chorus whispers about a certain actor's nerves, while rival playwrights trade barbs about who's really the genius behind that clever twist in Act 3. The city's high society might be fixated on the contest's outcome, but those in the wings are living for tonight's backstage drama. Light joke. In Athens it's said you haven't truly made it as an actor until someone in the chorus invents a rhyme about your worst stage fright.
There's real risk in the wings.
Stagehands fumble with pulleys, knowing that a single mishap can send a god crashing down, or a monster failing to appear. Some accidents become as famous as the plays themselves. A hero who loses his wig mid-speech, a prop sword that won't unsheath, a chorus that forgets their lines, and invents a song about figs instead.
Historians still argue whether the backstage camaraderie was genuine friendship or simply tactical alliances. Did the months of grueling rehearsal and shared anxiety build real bonds, or did the fierce competition for roles and praise breed only resentment? Probably both, depending on the day and the personalities involved. The tension spikes before a big entrance. An actor stands, trembling slightly, eyes closed as he recites his lines for the 100th time. The chorus readies their cues, checking tunics and sandals, shooting nervous glances at the prop table. In these moments, ancient Greek theatre is less about glory and more about survival. Will the play come together? Will the lines be remembered? Will the crowd laugh or boo? Yet for all the drama, the sense of community is real. When the curtain metaphorically falls, and the last lines echo into the night, everyone, winners and losers alike, returns to the same city, the same dusty streets. A shared story, a shared memory, a shared exhaustion.
Historians still debate whether these backstage dramas mattered more than the plays themselves. But as you slip out from behind the skein, the first rays of dawn lighting the Acropolis, you sense that every tragedy and every comedy is shaped as much by what happens out of sight as by what's seen under the Athenian sun.
You walk home through empty streets, the laughter and tension of backstage clinging to you like the smell of old robes and fresh paint, already looking forward to the next act on stage or off. Dawn creeps over Athens, painting the stones gold, and you find yourself marvelling at the names and legends that have survived centuries. Some playwrights are known to every schoolchild, their words inscribed in marble and memory. Others have faded, their stories lost to time, their scripts surviving only in rumour and battered fragments. Yet their ghosts still linger here, in the way each new performance echoes lines written long ago. Tonight, you get to eavesdrop on the secrets, quirks and legacies of the men who wrote the very soul of Greek theatre. Mainstream historical fact: the great playwrights, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides and Aristophanes, changed the world of theatre forever. Aeschylus, often credited as the father of tragedy, is said to have written over 70 plays, though only a handful remain. Sophocles penned more than 100 plays, introducing innovations like the third actor and painted scenery. Euripides shocked audiences by twisting myths and exposing the rawness of human emotion. And Aristophanes, the undisputed master of comedy, lampooned politicians, philosophers and the audience itself. Their words shaped drama from Athens to Broadway. But for every name remembered, a dozen have vanished. Most plays are gone, their scripts lost to fire, flood, or the apathy of future ages. Historians still argue whether these forgotten works were brilliant, boring, or simply unlucky. Sometimes, only a line or a title survives, just enough to spark curiosity and endless speculation.
It's like finding a single shoe and trying to imagine the whole parade. Quirky tidbit: the playwrights themselves were celebrities, their likenesses carved into busts and coins. Some had notorious tempers, legendary drinking habits, or rumours of strange habits.
Sophocles was said to never revise a word, while Euripides lived in a cave outside the city to escape critics. Playwrights often inserted themselves into their own plays as characters, and Aristophanes delighted in writing cameos for his rivals, sometimes flattering, sometimes not so much. You hear old stories from locals about the way playwrights would roam the city, reciting lines to the olive trees or performing snippets for anyone who'd listen. Many made enemies as well as friends, their reputation swelling with every festival. To win at the Dionysia meant more than fame. It was a kind of immortality, a chance to outlive even the grandest temples or statues. Like joke. In Athens, Your play might be lost to time, but your worst review would last forever. The creation of a play was a monumental task.
The playwright had to compose hundreds of lines, train the chorus, work with musicians, and coordinate with city officials. The deadline was absolute. If your script wasn't ready, someone else took your place.
The stress could drive men to brilliance, or, occasionally, to disappear mid-festival. Rumour had it one poet faked his own illness to avoid a disastrous premiere. Historians still debate whether the surviving plays represent the best of Greek theatre, or just the luckiest. What if a masterpiece was performed on a rainy day to a half-empty theatre and vanished forever? What if the greatest line ever written blew away in the Aegean wind? You stroll past the statues of these legendary writers, wondering which of today's stories will survive and which will vanish with time. It's a humbling thought and a reminder that theatre is a living thing, reborn with every performance, reshaped with every telling, both anchored in the past and flying loose into the unknown. As Athens wakes and the city returns to its workaday buzz, you carry the voices of the playwrights with you, their wit, wisdom and wild ambition whispering in your ear, proof that in the world's oldest theatre, even the lost lines can still find an echo. You slip back through the theatre gates, just in time for another crowd pleaser. Not the play, but the audience itself. If you thought Athenians were reserved, the roar that greets every performance will set you straight. The theatre is not a place for quiet contemplation, it's an arena of participation, noisy as a market, and unpredictable as a thunderstorm. Here the audience is as much a part of the show as the actors, cheering, jeering, tossing snacks, and debating every line with the fervour of lifelong fans. The show isn't over until the crowd has had its say. Mainstream historical fact. The audience at ancient Greek theatre festivals was famously rowdy. People brought picnic baskets and wine, debated the merits of each playwright, and weren't shy about making their feelings known. The Greeks believed that an engaged audience improved the drama, applause, boos, even thrown objects could shape the course of a performance. Sitting in the front row was an honour and a risk. You might be showered with praise or pelted with a stale barley cake. The excitement starts before the show. Vendors work the aisles, hawking olives, bread, dried figs, and the occasional honey cake. Groups of friends compare notes, betting on which play will win or which chorus will trip over their tunics first. Once the performance starts, the atmosphere only intensifies. A particularly moving speech can bring cheers and stomping. A flat joke might draw groans, or a chorus of mocking whistles. Quirky tidbits? The Greeks loved audience participation so much that some plays featured audience plants, chorus members disguised as regular viewers ready to stir up laughter or start a wave of applause at key moments. Some playwrights even wrote lines that expected a response. If the crowd was in a good mood, the energy was electric. If not, well, there are stories of actors running off stage in embarrassment, chased by rain of grapes or fig leaves. You watch as the action pauses for a comic parabasis. The chorus turns and addresses the crowd directly, roasting politicians, mocking the city's fashion, or delivering sly commentary on Athens's latest scandals. The laughter is raucous, and a few in the crowd join in, shouting their own punchlines. One old man in the back seems to have a joke for every scene, a walking, talking commentary track, the kind every city wishes it could mute, but secretly loves. Light joke. In Athens, you haven't truly experienced theatre until someone next to you tries to finish the chorus's line, louder than the actors. Children race through the aisles, women pass snacks and gossip, and old friends reunite over shared memories of legendary performances. Audience members debate the meaning of each scene, sometimes so loudly that the actors pause to let them finish. It's theatre as sport, community ritual, and mass catharsis, all rolled into one.
Historians still argue whether the rowdiness improved the art or just made things harder for playwrights. Did audience participation elevate the drama, or did it distract from the work? Perhaps both. What's certain is that the Greek audience left its mark on every performance, a chorus of thousands shaping the experience from the first line to the last bow. As the play ends and the crowd spills out into the agora, you feel the pulse of a city alive with drama. The stories will continue over dinner tables, in taverns, and by lamplight, everyone a critic, everyone a fact. You wander home, the laughter of Athens echoing in your ears, realizing that the best part of the theatre might just be the noisy, joyful, utterly unpredictable crowd that made every night a new adventure.
By midday, the Athenian sun glints off the sequins, and silks backstage as another troupe of actors lines up, ready for the world's oldest costume parade.
You find yourself mesmerized by the transformation. Men turning into queens, beggars into gods, young lads into cranky old men, all thanks to the art of costumes, makeup, and a little cross-dressing mischief. If ever there was proof that Greek theatre knew how to put on a show, it's the riot of fabrics, wigs and masks that swirl across the stage. Mainstream historical fact. Costumes were a critical part of Greek theatre. Actors wore long, flowing chitons, dyed in bright colours, with oversized cloaks, elaborate headdresses, and high platform shoes, called kofouni, to increase their stature and visibility. Makeup was simple, but the effect of costume was dramatic. One actor could play several roles by swapping masks, robes, and accessories, sometimes in mere moments backstage. You watch as an actor dons a flowing veil, slips into padded robes, and ties on a mask with delicate painted lips. Instantly, he becomes a tragic heroine or a cunning queen, ready to wring every tear and gasp from the crowd. Next to him, another actor struggles into the hide of a satyr, complete with woolly leggings and a fake tail, before scampering on stage with a bawdy wink. In comedies, the costumes go wild. Men in padded bellies, comic fallacies, yes really, and outrageous wigs. A hero might sport a fake beard for gravitas, or a villain might wear a shimmering cloak that practically glows in the sun. Quirky tidbit. Cross-dressing wasn't just for women's roles. Playwrights, especially Aristophanes, loved to subvert gender expectations, dressing male characters as women, women as men, or both as something entirely ridiculous. These costume changes weren't just for laughs. They poked fun at social rules, exposed hypocrisy, and gave the audience a chance to laugh at their own expectations. Imagine a modern award show, but everyone is in drag, and the jokes are twice as sharp. Backstage, costumers are the unsung heroes, sewing late into the night, repairing sandals and making sure every wig is untangled before the next entrance. Actors swap robes in frantic succession, sometimes barely making it back on stage before their next line. The chorus might switch from stately priests to noisy frogs between acts, the only constant being the cloud of dust and the whiff of sweat and perfume trailing behind. Historians still argue whether costume was more about spectacle or symbolism. Did the glittering robes and platform shoes make the gods seem larger than life, or were they simply there to help the audience spot the heroes from the cheap seats? Some costumes were reserved for sacred roles, white for priestesses, gold for gods, while others were chosen for maximum comic effect. A light joke, in Athens, the quickest way to make an entrance was to trip over your own coffin, and rumour has it, the audience loved a pratfall almost as much as a perfect speech. There's an odd comfort in the endless parade of costumes. Each change reminds you that identity, in the theatre and in life, is a slippery, ever-shifting thing. Heroes become villains, fools turn wise, men transform into women, and back again. It's a living lesson in empathy and in the art of not taking yourself too seriously. As the next play begins, you marvel at how the swish of a robe, the flash of a wig, or the slip of a mask can transport you to another world, another self. For a city obsessed with reputation and honour, the theatre offers a rare chance to be someone else, even if only until the next costume change. The sun dips low, casting long shadows on the stage. The actors, now half gods, half mortals, take their places, and for a moment Athens itself is transformed. Every citizen a little bit more themselves, and a little bit more someone else. As twilight cools the city, the air hums with the sound of flutes and the stamping of dozens of sandaled feet. Tonight, the theatre pulses with rhythm. Actors and chorus members break into intricate dances, their movements woven tightly to the music. Song and dance are as essential to Greek theatre as the scripts themselves. A vivid musical language that carries the emotion and meaning of every play. If you thought the Greeks sat quietly in their seats, think again. Here, even the tragedies have their own.
Mainstream historical fact, music and dance were fundamental elements of every performance. The aulos, a reed instrument somewhere between a clarinet and a double recorder, led the melodies, its sharp notes cutting through the open air. The chorus danced in coordinated patterns, sometimes stately, sometimes wild, as they sang the odes that divided and commented on the drama.
The rhythm of feet, the sweep of arms, the arc of voices in harmony, all blended to make every play a living spectacle. You watch as the chorus assembles, their feet pounding in perfect time, arms lifted, masks tilted to catch the last rays of the sun. In tragedies, their movements are slow and solemn, every gesture heavy with meaning. In comedies, the dance grows quick, playful, and even a little rowdy as the actors leap and spin, their high platform shoes adding an extra challenge, and the occasional comic wobble, the sound of the alos rises. A melody both ancient and eerily modern, threading through the drama like a heartbeat. Quirky tidbit, some dances were so famous that they became city-wide crazes. The crane dance, said to have been invented by Theseus after escaping the labyrinth, was performed at festivals across Greece. Other dances mimicked animals, frogs, birds, even wasps. Especially in comedies, where the chorus might spend half the play hopping, buzzing, or flapping their arms to the delight of the crowd. Imagine the world's first flash mob, but everyone's in sandals and togas.
You notice the musicians off to one side, tuning their instruments, sweat gleaming on their brows. Their job is thankless. If the music falters, the whole performance can tumble.
But tonight the rhythm holds, the melodies soar, and every song seems to lift the play higher, carrying it over the heads of the crowd and into the clear night sky.
Historians still debate how much of the music has been lost.
Only fragments of the original score survive, notes scratched onto stone or papyrus, a few rhythmic instructions handed down. Was the theatre more like an opera, with every line sung, or was music used just to set the mood? No one is quite sure. What's certain is that the sound of Greek theatre, the stomp and song of the chorus, has echoed through centuries, influencing everything from Roman spectacles to Broadway musicals. Light joke, in Athens, the quickest way to get a song stuck in your head was to join the chorus. Some say the city's first earworms were actual worms, wiggling out of the aulos when the music got too catchy. The magic of music and dance brings the audience together. No matter your rank or mood, you can't help but feel the beat in your bones, the pull of the chorus's rhythm. You find yourself tapping a foot, humming along, maybe even miming a dance step when no one's looking. It's a reminder that theatre here is not just seen or heard, it's felt, deep down in the shared pulse of the crowd. As the night deepens, the dances grow more intense, the songs more poignant. You realise that, for all the grand speeches and mighty masks, it's the music and the movement that linger longest. Echoes of a city that, for a few days each year, turns life itself into one great communal dance. Night descends, cool and fragrant, as another performance winds down. The festival is many things, contest, spectacle, marathon of emotion, but at its root, it's a sacred ritual, a ceremony for gods and mortals alike. You sense it in the way the actors pause for prayer before stepping on stage, in the offerings made at Dionysus's altar, and in the low melodic hymns that close every day's drama. Origins of Greek theatre are found in religion, and even now, amid laughter and applause, the divine is never far away. Mainstream historical fact. Greek theatre was born from religious ritual, evolving out of ancient choral songs, dithyrambs sung to Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and ecstatic celebration. Every festival began with sacrifices and libations to the gods, and the first rows of the theatre were reserved for priests and sacred officials. The chorus's songs and the plays themselves were acts of worship, meant to honour Dionysus and secure the city's good fortune. You watch as the priest of Dionysus approaches the altar, leading the crowd in solemn chants. A garlanded goat is led forward, sometimes offered as a sacrifice, sometimes as a symbolic gesture. And yes, this is where the word tragedy gets its roots. Tragos means goat. The crowd bows their heads as wine is poured, prayers are said, and the city renews its covenant with the gods of earth, sky and stage. Quirky tidbit: backstage, actors wore small charms or amulets for luck. Tiny statues of Dionysus or carved olive wood figures. Some were notorious for their pre-show rituals, a quick sip of wine, a whispered prayer, or the careful tying of sandal straps in a particular order. Playwrights were known to dedicate their scripts to Apollo or Athena, just in case Dionysus was busy elsewhere. The sense of ceremony permeates every performance. The chorus's dances are like ancient spells, their odes part invocation, part entertainment. Even the rowdiest comedies open with a prayer and close with a benediction. No one forgets, not for a moment, that the gods are watching, judging, and if properly entertained, blessing the city in return. Historians still argue whether theatre was truly sacred or simply used religious trappings as a license for wild celebration. Was the Dionysia a serious act of piety, or an excuse to let loose? Most agree it was both. Athens at its most reverent and its most riotous, all in the same breath. You watch as a comic chorus of satyrs capers around the altar, their laughter mingling with the fading smoke of sacrifice. For a moment, it's impossible to tell where the sacred ends and the profane begins. Perhaps that's the genius of Greek theatre, the way it folds prayer and parody into a single seamless ritual. Light joke. In Athens, the gods might grant you inspiration, but you still have to memorize your lines. Divine help only goes so far. As the final hymn echoes into the night, and the crowd files out under the watchful stars, you sense the city's gratitude, a shared hope that for another year the gods have been pleased and the stories will continue. It's a reminder that every act of theatre is in its own way a kind of prayer, a plea for laughter, for understanding, and for the favour of forces beyond our control. The torches burn low, the altar glows faintly, and Athens sleeps under the gaze of Dionysus, dreaming perhaps of the next great story, waiting to be told. Dawn slips through the columns as the city shakes off sleep, but not everyone wakes refreshed. This morning, the city is buzzing with stories, not just of the plays, but of the scandals and controversies that have rippled out from the stage. Greek theatre, for all its reverence and ritual, is also a hotbed of troublemaking. From scripts that spark outrage to actors who court infamy, the Dionysia is just as famous for its scandals as its masterpieces. Mainstream historical fact: censorship and scandal were no strangers to Athenian theatre. While playwrights enjoyed a remarkable freedom of speech, they often pushed boundaries, lampooning politicians, philosophers, and even the gods. Sometimes the city roared with laughter, Other times it recoiled in shock. When the jokes cut too close to home or the tragedies questioned sacred beliefs, authorities could fine, exile or punish those responsible. But controversy, as ever, sold tickets and kept Athens talking long after the last lines were sung. You hear whispers as you passed through the agora. Did you see what Aristophanes said about Cleon? They say the chorus dressed as wasps was a jab at the courts. One old man cackles about the time a play poked fun at the Spartans, nearly starting a diplomatic incident. The playwrights walk a fine line, daring enough to challenge the city's powerful, careful enough not to end up in court. Light joke, in Athens the best way to get famous, or infamous, was to write a play with more insults than lines. Quirky tidbit, some plays were so scandalous they were banned mid-performance. The chorus chased off stage by officials waving scrolls of new laws. Aristophanes, the fearless master of satire, was sued at least twice and nearly exiled for his biting humour. Meanwhile, Euripides' willingness to question the gods and portray women as powerful, thinking beings ruffled more than a few feathers. These controversies made the plays legendary, ensuring their fame, or infamy, for generations. The scandals weren't just about the scripts. Actors could become notorious for offstage antics. Drunken brawls, affairs, or outrageous costume malfunctions that set the city gossiping for weeks. Some even say a play's success depended as much on its capacity for controversy as its poetic beauty. Historians still debate whether Athenian theatre's scandals reflect true social critique, or just a clever way to boost ratings. Did the plays genuinely challenge the status quo, or did they merely let the audience enjoy a safe form of rebellion? Either way, the city relished every shock and gasp. Even the structure of the theatre fed the drama. Audience members could stand up and heckle, officials could halt a play, and a playwright's career could end with a single badly received joke. Yet, for every outrage, there were loyal fans, eager to defend their favourite provocateurs and spread the tales of their boldness across the city. We watch as a new day's play begins, the actors subtly winking at the crowd, sliding in double meanings and sly references. The chorus delivers lines with a knowing look. And somewhere in the back, a group of teenagers snickers, already planning the next day's gossip. As the sun climbs and the city's debates spill into the streets, you realise the true power of Athenian theatre. It is art as argument, laughter as protest, scandal as a public sport, a living, breathing thing that can't help but stir the pot, poke the powerful, and make the city confront itself with every new story. You wander home, half shocked, half amused, and wholly convinced that in Athens, scandal is just another act in the endless play of life. By midday, the city buzzes with new arrivals and strange accents, for the world of Greek theatre does not belong to Athens alone. Beyond the marbled columns and olive groves, troops of actors travel dusty roads, carting costumes and masks to distant towns. Tonight, you follow in their footsteps out past the city walls, where touring companies bring drama, laughter, and the gods themselves to crowds far from the great festivals. Mainstream historical fact: Greek theatre was not confined to Athens. As the fame of the Dionysia and its playwrights spread, so did the appetite for drama. Touring troupes of actors, sometimes professionals, sometimes bands of enthusiastic amateurs, set out to perform in neighbouring cities, tiny villages, and the great colonial outposts of Magna Graecia and Asia Minor. Some played in grand stone theatres, others set up makeshift stages in town squares or beside rural temples. Greek plays, their characters and themes, became part of the shared fabric of the Mediterranean world. You follow a band of actors bumping along in a creaky ox cart, their gear piled high. At a crossroads they're greeted by a local priest, and a few curious villagers. The play tonight might be a tragedy by Sophocles, or a bawdy farce borrowed from Aristophanes. There's a flurry of activity as a stage is marked out with ropes, masks are unpacked, and a chorus of local boys is recruited to fill out the ranks. Rehearsal is a blur of missed cues and costume malfunctions, but as dusk falls, a crowd gathers. Farmers, merchants, children, even slaves, all hungry for something out of the ordinary. Quirky tidbit. In remote regions, actors sometimes improvised or translated lines into local dialects, adding jokes or changing references so the stories would make sense for the audience. Sometimes a mythic hero became a local farmer, or the gods got new names. Some troupes became so beloved that towns would compete to host them, showering the actors with gifts, feasts, and in one famous case, a live goat, which promptly escaped during the first act. The shows are rowdy, unpredictable, and deeply communal. Spectators shout advice to the actors, children sneak backstage, and sometimes an animal wanders onto the stage mid-performance, instantly upstaging the whole cast. In these moments, the line between audience and actor blurs, and everyone becomes part of the story. Light joke. In the provinces, the best way to end a dull scene is to let a goat loose. Instant applause guaranteed. Historians still argue whether these travelling performances were true to the Athenian originals, or something new altogether. Did the essence of Greek drama survive the journey, or was it reshaped by every village it visited? Perhaps that is the magic. The way a story told on the great stone stage finds new life in a dusty square, growing and changing with every telling. You watch as a makeshift chorus stumbles through their final dance, the audience roaring with laughter and approval. When the play ends, villagers gather around the actors, pressing gifts into their hands and begging for a song or a story to take home. The troupe packs up under the stars, already planning the next day's journey and the next eager crowd. As you drift away from the noise, you realize that theatre's true power is not just in the grand festivals, but in its endless journey, its ability to travel, adapt, and make every village, every field a stage. Long before radio or television, drama wandered by lantern light, linking strangers with the shared magic of words, laughter, and the wild hope that the gods might yet walk among them. The festival nears its end, but for a moment, look beyond the actors and the glare of fame. In the shadowy top rows of the theatre, in crowded market squares, in every humble house and grand estate, drama belongs to the people. The audience itself is a glorious mess of humanity, rich and poor, slave and senator, women in veils, soldiers off duty, and wide-eyed children hanging on every word. Tonight you settle in among them, feeling how Greek theatre shaped and was shaped by the everyday lives of the masses. Mainstream historical fact. Greek theatre was the great social leveller of its age. At major festivals, even the poorest citizens attended, with the city subsidizing tickets for those who could not afford them. Slaves and foreigners were permitted to watch, and while the best seats went to officials and priests, the cheap seats at the top welcomed everyone else. This blend of classes and backgrounds made the theatre a rare place where Athenian society mingled as equals, if only for a few hours. You look around and see children climbing into laps, peddlers sneaking sips of watered wine, soldiers still in their dusty uniforms. Women whisper behind their veils, and merchants pass small coins and fresh figs to their neighbours. An old man snoozes through the prologue. A young couple, hands entwined, shares their first laugh at an onstage joke. The chorus sings, and a ripple of excitement travels all the way to the back row, where the city's least privileged press together, eager for a glimpse of the gods and heroes. Quirky tidbit, the most enthusiastic fans sometimes became regulars. recognised by actors and playwrights, and even immortalised in a play's jokes. In some years, so many people tried to crowd in that latecomers sat on walls, rooftops, or even nearby hills, listening to the echoes of the performance. There are stories of slaves so devoted to theatre that they risked their master's anger just to catch the opening lines. The sense of community is palpable. During the festival, private grievances are set aside, feuds and debts are for a time forgotten. The laughter, the gasps, the moments of shared silence weave a fabric of belonging tighter than any law. The city feels smaller, its people drawn together by the spell of story. Light joke. In Athens, the one place you're least likely to get robbed was the theatre. Every thief was in the audience. Historians still debate how radical this inclusiveness really was. Did the theatre truly give voice to all, or did it mostly reinforce the status quo? Perhaps both. What's certain is that for the length of a play, the lines of class, gender, and citizenship, the woes of kings and the jokes of slaves meet in the same space, echoing through the city and into the private dreams of its people. As the final play draws to a close, applause erupts from every corner, rich and poor, old and young. The crowd lingers in the aisles, trading opinions and memories, savouring the rare pleasure of sharing something larger than themselves. You walk out into the night among them, your heart lighter for the sense of belonging, your mind still humming with the stories that have bound this city together year after year. It's a reminder that theatre, in its purest form, is not just about spectacle or genius. It's about people ordinary and extraordinary, sitting side by side, laughing, weeping, and for a moment, feeling less alone beneath the stars. The city quiets, but your mind keeps spinning. You turn to the stones beneath your feet and the columns overhead, and wonder how it was all built. If Greek theatre feels eternal, it's because its very foundations are crafted by architects and stonemasons who made stages to last through centuries of storms, laughter, and change. Tonight, you wander the bones of the theatres themselves, marvelling at how art and engineering came together to shape a legacy of story. Mainstream historical fact: Greek theatres were architectural marvels, perfectly tuned to their landscapes, built into natural hillsides. They used the slope for seating and the open sky for acoustics. The Theatre of Dionysus, the oldest and most famous, could hold up to 17,000 people, its semicircular rows fanning out from the orchestra in precise geometry. Every seat, even at the very top, offered a clear view and a surprisingly crisp sound. No microphones needed, just genius design. You run your hand along ancient stone, feeling the grooves worn smooth by generations of festival goers. The lowest rows, reserved for priests and officials, are carved with the names of donors and famous citizens. The upper tiers are simpler, more crowded, sometimes patched and repaired after earthquakes or years of wild celebration. The orchestra ring, once dirt and grass, is paved in marble. The stage building behind the actors is painted with scenes of palaces or temples, its doors the portals for kings, gods, and comedic chaos.
Quirky tidbit. Some theatres featured elaborate water drainage systems to prevent flooding during Athens' rare but dramatic rainstorms. A few even had removable wooden seats for extra festival goers, and at least one boasted a roof over the skiing, making it the envy of every actor on a rainy spring day. Historians still debate whether the true innovation was the seating, the acoustics, or just the clever use of the landscape. What's certain is that the theatres outlived empires, and the very stones became silent witnesses to centuries of drama. As you walk the rows, you see graffiti, ancient and modern. Tourists have carved names, lovers have etched hearts, children have left playful doodles. Every mark is a testament to the city's ongoing love affair with story. Sometimes a single seat is so worn you can picture its original owner, perched on the edge, heart pounding with anticipation,
as the chorus begins to sing. Light joke. In Athens, you're not a true theatre fan until you've left a little scratch on the marble. Just try not to get caught by the priests. Today, many of these theatres still stand, their stones warmed by the same sun, their stages host to new generations of actors and dreamers. Modern performances echo the ancient ones. Shakespeare and Sophocles share the same wind, the same hush before the curtain rises. The stones are old, but the spirit is forever young. You sit in the silence, gazing out over the city, and realize that the greatest story of all may be the theatre itself, a place built for memory, for joy, for heartbreak, and for the endless pleasure of gathering together to witness the human adventure. As you leave the empty theatre, you carry the memory of every step, every stone, every echo. For just a moment, you are part of something vast and lasting, a legacy built not only in marble and mortar, but in laughter, applause, and the gentle hush that falls when the lights go down and the story begins. Dawn glimmers softly on Athens, painting gold across silent columns and half-empty wine jugs. The festival may be nearly over, but behind the painted masks and public bravado, another show is always in progress. The everyday drama behind the drama. Tonight you slip into the shadows backstage, joining the chorus of bustling stagehands, sleep-deprived actors, and frazzled playwrights. It's a world of nerves and hope, routine and surprise, a quiet counterpoint to the city's grand stage. Mainstream historical fact. The machinery of Greek theatre relied on dozens, sometimes hundreds of workers behind the scenes. Stagehands set up painted scenery, managed props, tended the torches, and operated the famed mechane.
Choreographers drilled the chorus through endless hours of footwork, while musicians tuned their instruments to fill the air with melody. Actors and chorus members spent weeks in rehearsal, memorizing not just lines, but the intricate patterns of dance, music, and gesture that made Greek drama unforgettable.
Backstage, the air is thick with nervous energy. The wardrobe mistress fusses over a trailing hem. A chorus leader whispers final reminders to a fidgety band of teenagers, eyes wide behind their masks. Playwrights pace, muttering to themselves, debating whether to risk a new joke or stick with the safe old lines. Someone is missing a sandal. Someone else is missing an entire costume. The gods may watch from Olympus, but here backstage, the stakes feel even higher. Quirky tidbit. The most famous actors developed superstitions, rituals for luck, lucky shoes, forbidden foods before a big scene. Some even swore by bizarre vocal warm-ups, humming like bees, croaking like frogs, or running laps around the scene. Before opening night, stories circulated about last-minute disasters and miraculous saves, a chorus member who fainted from heat, only to be revived by a splash of wine, or an actor who forgot his lines and simply sang nonsense, earning a standing ovation for sheer confidence. Light joke. In Athens, the quickest way to find out if you're really part of the theatre is to realise you've been sweeping the stage since dawn and still haven't seen the end of a play. Historians still argue whether the backstage camaraderie was a genuine fellowship or just a temporary truce forged in the fire of shared exhaustion.
Sometimes actors became lifelong friends, sometimes bitter rivals. Many returned to ordinary life as bakers, merchants, or even politicians, carrying a secret pride that for a handful of days each year, they were part of the most storied tradition in the ancient world. You watch as the next performance teeters on the edge of chaos, but somehow through whispered cues and frantic costume changes, the show always goes on.
A forgotten prop becomes a clever joke. A missed entrance is covered with an impromptu dance. Laughter and nerves mix behind the curtain, never seen, never celebrated, but always essential. Historians still debate whether the real theatre was on stage or back here, in the wings and workrooms, where memory, imagination, and a touch of madness turned simple stories into living, breathing myth.
As you leave the chaos behind, slipping into the peaceful city streets, you realise that every performance, Every festival, every legend, owes as much to those out of sight as to those under the torchlight. It's a gentle reminder that the best stories, like the best lives, are made not just in grand gestures, but in the quiet, persistent efforts of the many who make the magic real. As the festival wears on, you notice the lines between myth and reality begin to blur. The stage is alive with heroes and monsters, gods and mortals, yet the stories they enact feel strangely familiar, echoes of real hopes, fears and follies in the Athenian streets. Tonight, the theatre doesn't just entertain, it retells and reshapes the legends that have woven themselves through Greek life for generations. You're swept up in tales older than the stones beneath your feet, yet as fresh as the day's gossip. Mainstream historical fact. Nearly every Greek play drew its plot from the myths and legends of old. Homeric epics, tales of the Argonauts, stories of gods meddling in mortal affairs. The tragedies revisited the cycles of the House of Atreus, the labours of Heracles, the journeys of Odysseus. Comedies borrowed and bent myth for satire, parody, and even gentle ribbing of the gods themselves. Playwrights were both keepers of tradition and bold reinventors, using well-known stories as a canvas for new ideas and contemporary commentary. You watch as an actor, crowned in gold leaves, becomes Oedipus, proud, doomed, heartbreakingly human. The chorus wails for Cassandra, who warns and is ignored.
In the next play, a raucous group of gods bicker on Mount Olympus, their quarrels hilariously close to those of your neighbours. The audience nods in recognition or bursts into laughter. Even the children know the stories, their meanings running deeper with each retelling.
Quirky tidbit. Sometimes the mythic material was tweaked for a political jab or a topical joke. Aristophanes, for example, once staged a play where Heracles is mocked for gluttony and Dionysus himself is cast as a coward. Audiences loved these reversals, delighting in seeing the mighty brought down to earth, or upended altogether. In tragedies, playwrights occasionally invented entirely new endings, giving doomed heroes one more chance, or sneaking in a flash of hope amid all the doom and gloom. Light joke. In Athens, if you were ever bored of your family's drama, you could always see a version of it, just with more togas and slightly more divine intervention on the stage. Historians still argue whether these mythic retellings reinforced traditional values or encouraged new ways of thinking. Did seeing Agamemnon suffer make Athenians more humble, or did laughing at Zeus's blunders make the gods seem less frightening? The debates echo through time. But what's certain is that the stage gave Athens a place to process its deepest stories, to laugh at its own legends, and to imagine new possibilities in the guise of ancient heroes. The boundaries are never fixed. A myth told in one generation becomes the punchline of the next, the moral lesson of another. Through it all, the theatre remains the city's collective memory, a place where the wisdom and folly of the past are kept alive, not in marble, but in the living, shifting magic of performance. As the festival night deepens, and another myth is born again beneath the stars, you realize that every story told is a bridge between past and present, between dream and reality, between the world as it was and as it might be. The festival's last dawn glows faintly over the city, and the mood is both triumphant and bittersweet. You've seen so many plays, some that will echo through ages, others that might fade before the next moonrise. But for every legendary masterpiece, there are lost works, vanished scripts, and stories that survive only as fragments or memories. The sands of time are not kind to even the greatest dramas. Tonight, you sift through what remains, and wonder about all that's been forgotten. Mainstream historical fact. Of the hundreds, maybe thousands of plays written in Athens' golden age, only a tiny handful survive in full. The works of Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides and Aristophanes are treasured relics, preserved by chance, taste, and the labour of generations. Most playwrights are now only names. Many of their greatest triumphs exist only as titles, short quotations, or tantalizing summaries in ancient critics' works. The loss is staggering, a vanished world of wit, wisdom, and wild imagination. You pass a scribe in the agora, copying lines from a recent hit, careful not to smudge the ink. Theatres commission new scripts each year, and as fashions change, older plays slip out of memory. Some scripts are lost in fires, others simply rot in forgotten chests. Sometimes a script is borrowed for kindling, or recopied so poorly that its sense disappears. Scribes make mistakes or improve the lines with their own additions, and what remains is as much a puzzle as a performance. Quirky tidbit: rumours swirl of secret libraries or private collectors who hoarded forbidden or scandalous plays, scripts tucked away in temples, hidden in tombs, or spirited off to distant lands. Some say that a few lost masterpieces might still lie waiting in an untouched scroll jar, ready to surprise the world. Others believe that the greatest comedies or most daring tragedies were never written down at all, remembered only in the laughter or tears of their audiences. Light joke: in Athens it's said, the only thing harder than remembering all your lines is finding a lost play in your own house. Historians still argue about why so much has been lost. Was it accident or censorship, neglect or deliberate erasure? Did later generations simply prefer new stories, or were older ones suppressed because of their ideas? Every scholar has a favourite theory and a favourite lost play they long to rediscover. Yet, for all that's gone, what remains is dazzling. The tragedies that inspired philosophers and emperors, the comedies that still make us laugh, the fragments that hint at worlds of humour and heartbreak. Each line is a window into another life, another night under the stars, another audience sharing the same hush, the same burst of applause. You linger at the edge of the empty theatre, listening for echoes of voices long vanished. The city wakes, the festival's debris is swept away. But you carry with you the knowledge that every performance is, at heart, an act of faith, a hope that something will last, that the story will go on, even when the words themselves are gone.
In Athens, the greatest drama is not just what endures, but what slips through our fingers, reminding us to listen closely, to remember fiercely, and to cherish every fleeting moment beneath the open sky.
The festival's end does not bring silence. Instead, the streets fill with echoes of what you've seen, lines half remembered, tunes hummed softly, jokes and laments retold at every supper table. The truth is, ancient Greek theatre never really died. Its legacy has rippled outward, shaping worlds far beyond the shadow of the Acropolis. Tonight you wander through those echoes, tracing how the spirit of the old stage still dances in our own. Mainstream historical fact: Greek theatre's influence is everywhere. Roman playwrights copied its forms, Shakespeare borrowed its plots and tricks, and modern stages still light up with its stories. The concept of democracy owes much to Athens' culture of public debate, performance, and critique. Even the terms we use, tragedy, comedy, protagonist, are Greek. The legacy of the Dionysia, its masks and choruses, its debates and delights, is woven into Western art, politics, and ritual.
You walk through a city far from Athens, maybe Rome, maybe London, maybe your own hometown, and see how the ancient stage lives on.
Statues of comic and tragic muses overlook new theatres. Politicians perform for crowds with all the subtlety of a Greek chorus. Schoolchildren recite Antigone or Lysistrata in modern tongues. The old forms adapt. Tragedies are retold in film and television. Comedies become sitcoms, and stand-up choruses become comment sections online. Rowdy as ever, just with fewer figs thrown. Quirky tidbit: the Olympic Games once revived ancient Greek drama as part of their festivities. some modern festivals still perform Sophocles in ancient amphitheatres, with actors and audiences travelling across continents for the thrill of a story told under open sky. In Japan, no theatre borrowed Greek masks. In Bollywood, sprawling ensemble casts nod to Athenian choruses. It seems every culture wants a piece of the Dionysian magic. Like joke. If you think bad reviews are new, think again. Ancient Athens practically invented the cranky critic. Aristophanes would have fit right in on social media. Historians still debate how much of this influence is direct, how much is the shared need for story, spectacle, and collective catharsis. Did the Greeks invent theatre as we know it, or just give a name and a frame to what every community has always done? Either way, the Acropolis's shadow stretches long, and its spirit lingers wherever humans gather to laugh, weep, and watch each other on stage. You pass a modern playhouse and glimpse actors rehearsing by lamplight, a director muttering about chorus timing, a crowd buzzing with anticipation. You realise that for all our screens and speakers, the magic is the same. The hush before the first line, the laughter that rolls through a crowd, the feeling just for a moment that you are part of something vast and old, and wonderfully alive. As you head home, the words and rhythms of the festival follow you, a living thread tying past and present, Athens and everywhere, in one long, sleepless, ever-renewing night of story. The stars are paling over Athens, and the city finally exhales. As you stroll the empty theatre rows, you realise that Greek drama was never just about gods and kings, masks and marbled seats. It's always been about something gentler, stranger, and closer to home. The curious way stories shape the way we dream. The festival is over, but in the hush that follows, you notice the true legacy of ancient theatre, how it slips into your imagination, colours your sleep, and stirs your thoughts as the night deepens. Mainstream historical fact, the Greeks believed in the power of dreams, and the theatre was thought to shape and even inspire the visions that visited you at night. Poets called the Muses to guide their words, and ordinary Athenians offered prayers that a good play would linger into their sleep. The lines of drama, repeated by children and whispered in private, became the raw material of dreams. Many believed the stage and the dream world were woven from the same cloth, each feeding the other with images, hopes, and warnings. You walk slowly, the last echoes of chorus and flute drifting on the dawn breeze. Some say that after a great tragedy, the city's dreams were heavier, haunted by kings and omens. After a riotous comedy, people woke laughing, the music still fizzing in their ears. Playwrights themselves claimed inspiration came in dreams, stories gifted by the gods in the quiet hours before sunrise, which they scribbled down before the day erased them. The dividing line between waking and dreaming was always thin in Athens. Quirky tidbit, it was common to tuck a snippet of verse under your pillow, just in case the words would bring good dreams, or even a solution to a problem. Superstitious actors kept tokens from performances on their bedside tables, hoping for a visit from the Muses. The city's wise women and philosophers argued over which stories brought restful sleep, and which stirred up nightmares. Some even blamed sleepless nights on poorly chosen plays. Like joke, in Athens, if you dreamed you'd forgotten your lines, you probably just needed another festival, and maybe a new mask. Historians still argue whether drama was a kind of therapy, a ritual cleansing, or just a grand distraction from everyday cares. Did the festival help people sleep better, or fill their minds with restless dreams? Did all those comedies and tragedies plant seeds of wisdom, or simply a fondness for gossip? In the end, perhaps the answer is as mixed as Athens itself. As you leave the theatre for the last time, the city is quiet, but something lingers, a sense that the stories live on in every heart and mind, drifting through the night, reshaping the dreams of everyone who listened. The greatest legacy of the Greeks may not be the marble seats or the immortal lines, but the gentle invitation to carry stories with us into our deepest, softest hours, where memory, myth, and the hush of history blend into one. Now the city falls utterly silent, and your breath is slow, steady, wrapped in the velvet hush that comes just before sunrise. The world of gods, heroes, laughter, and longing fades into softness, leaving only the gentle thrum of your own pulse, and the memory of 1,000 voices blending in song. The marble theatre behind you is empty, but the stories it held still shimmer in the cool air, whispering that you're not alone, not tonight, not ever. Let your thoughts slow and lengthen, floating gently between waking and dreaming. Feel the warmth of ancient stones beneath you, the hint of a breeze lifting your hair, the far-off echo of flute and chorus carrying you deeper into rest. There are no crowds here, no applause, just the deep comfort of being part of something so old and so human that it gently cradles your worries and hushes the world. As you drift, let every character, every line, every chorus rhyme dissolve into a single soothing quiet. There is nothing you need to do, nothing to solve, just this gentle passage into sleep. Even if stray memories linger, snatches of poetry, the shimmer of torchlight, a flash of laughter, let them drift softly, like petals on a stream, pulling you deeper into the gentle dark. Tonight, may your dreams be filled with stories that comfort and restore. May the hush of Athens travel with you, reminding you that sleep is its own ancient ritual, a gift passed from generation to generation, from festival to festival, until the world grows quiet and you are truly at peace. A good night.